Hey there, Coffee Catch-Ups listeners, thanks for tuning in again. We are super excited to get stuck into this next episode with you, Dare to Date, and our lovely guests, Sarah and Geraldine. However, Sarah and Geraldine have asked that we don't show their faces in this episode, and therefore to respect that, what we've done is we've cut the Zoom visual. You won't see our faces as you usually would on YouTube, but we've just designed a lovely little graphic to put on top of the sound as you watch. Don't let that put you off, it's a fantastic episode and we are really excited to share with you. Enjoy! Hey guys, welcome to Coffee Catch-Ups with me, Amelia Beaumont.
And me, Tanya Wiley.
Coffee Catch-Ups is a Christian podcast all about life in your 20s. Just to clarify, we are not theologians, we're not Bible teachers, we're not scholars. We are just two people who love Jesus and want to get to know him better. And this week, we are super mega excited to have the lovely Sarah and Geraldine with us from A Tale of Two Singles podcast. Hey guys.
Hello. That was, can I just say, very professionally done, that introduction. That was way smoother.
I think that might be the most professional one that we've done.
Very good. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for coming on. We're super excited to have you with us. Do you want to just start by kind of introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about who you are and your podcast?
So we're Sarah and Geraldine. And a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, we started a podcast called A Tale of Two Singles, all about kind of singleness and dating as people of faith. And then we did that kind of throughout the pandemic and have been doing it sporadically, let's be honest, ever since. And just it's been really interesting to kind of hear from loads of different people's perspectives about what it's like to be single and date, and kind of realise that this is actually a very big issue that a lot of people are talking about and feel like they want to talk about more.
Your podcast is fantastic. You talk about dating, you talk about singleness, you talk about looking for a partner, casual dating, serious dating. I love your phrase, dare to date. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about what sort of drove you to start it?
For a while, my job, I do writing, and people had kept saying to me oh, Sarah, you should write a book about singleness, you should talk about singleness. And I was like, no, I do not want to be that person who's typecast a single person and then I have to be single forever because I'm the person who talks about singleness, blah blah. And then basically at the start of the pandemic, we're really good friends and we talk a lot about this stuff anyway, and lots of people were talking to us about it. We were there's no teaching about it really. It seems to be kind of this thing of shame where people have either dated loads of people or they've never dated anyone or they break up and then it's awful. And so we thought, let's just, for a bit of fun really, let's start talking about it. The first one we just recorded on my phone with some wine and we didn't think we'd ever post it, and then we did, and loads of people listened to it, and we were I guess we should carry on then. So that's kind of why we started it, I think.
I know, I'm trying to think if there's a specific thing other than just the general conversations and that kind of I guess in your 20s 30s, it's a big topic of conversation, isn't it, really? Often within friendship groups, that's what's happening, it's what's around you. So I think just kind of from there, and I guess having conversations with so many different people, we were we're having a lot of the same conversations, so let's just bring it to the table.
Let's just have the conversation, just you guys, and then everyone can listen.
Just bring our wisdom, everyone.
Basically we have dating down to a T now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Are you guys experts?
No.
There's going to be a book and a TED talk.
I'm all for that.
I mean, we're definitely far from that.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when we just released an episode of a while back about singleness, and we were talking a little bit about how one of the difficulties of that is that you're almost not taken quite as seriously. Singleness isn't really talked about as much, not taken quite as seriously as married people. And if you're in relationship as well, it's kind of the expectation that is going to go to marriage. It's got to be intentional, serious dating. And it is definitely something that I've felt, and I think you too, Amelia, that it just wasn't really spoken about enough.
Also, the conversations always seem to be either like we say, kind of not had, or mega serious. And so it's really good to be able to kind of have these chats and just bring it into a more kind of casual sphere. And I think so for me, like I've never dated at all, and it's always been kind of like this huge thing that's like, oh my goodness, it's gonna happen, it's gonna be big, and it's gonna get married, like woo. But like it hasn't happened, and so it gets kind of even more kind of big in my head. And like I have to say, like in all seriousness, like your guys' podcast has been so helpful because it really changed my perspective on dating. Like actually it's okay to be casual about it, which is, you know, like not, you know, disrespectful to the other person casual, but like casual in terms of actually there doesn't need to be all of this pressure. So yeah, that's something that's really helped me. What, like,
That's so nice to hear. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that is. I'm glad that it's like actually helped.
Yeah, that's really
yeah,
nice.
no, 100%. So like I think one of the things that we really wanted to kind of go into, what is one thing for you guys that you like individually have learned either from the podcast or outside of the podcast about dating as a Christian?
We made a little list earlier.
Yeah, we did.
And actually, I'm going to steal the top one. And that is what you've said, really. That it's actually okay to date casually and that it doesn't need to be so serious. Because I think for me as well, it felt like such a huge thing. And like I had gone on dates with people, but I'd taken it like I'd been very like uncommitted to it in a way because I was like, oh, well, I don't want to marry this person. And actually that idea, well, that sounds disrespectful to people. They were great. I was really unsure. Yeah.
Marriage is
you
a
have
big thing.
yeah, you have these things from like Hollywood that you think there's going to be like this giant spark and like all this stuff's going to happen. Then you have from the church, you know, the very serious, like, you know, respect people, boundaries, stay on the other side of the room, don't like hang out with anyone one-on-one, you know, that kind of unhelpful side of it. And so I think actually just open up the conversation, thinking it's okay to date casually, and then also just getting people's funny dating stories in. I think actually that whole thing of like it's okay to laugh at like terrible dates, and it's okay for dates to go wrong, and it's okay for them to be funny, and it's okay for us to make idiots of ourselves, and actually just taking away like the shame around that, and just I think that helped to kind of make it more casual as well. So I think that's something that I probably would say.
Definitely, because as well, like if nothing else, if you've got a disastrous date, it is a great story in the end, isn't it? And you know, you learn a bit about yourself, like wear shoes that stay on effectively while dating. You know, don't dribble. Yeah, don't dribble. These sort of things. Great tips.
Or, even if you do dribble, you're revealing part of your authentic self.
Exactly. Yeah,
If you don't like it, then
I know, you're just showing your like very raw self in that moment. It's quite a vulnerable thing to do, really.
Yeah,
like if you're going to marry someone, you're going to need to know this, right? Like it's going to come out eventually.
Well, I think one of the other things that really like kind of struck, I guess, me and I think both of us, because we did say this before, was like even having this discussion. And I think sometimes we can really feel like it's just a kind of Christian church issue around dating and that it's really hard. But actually it's a very common universal kind of thing. Like it's not just specific to issues in the church or finding that difficult. Like I think dating is hard across the board. And I think actually that's helped me in being like, it's not just because of like the challenges around that. Actually, like this is a discussion that everyone is having, that dating is never that picture perfect A to B kind of thing. There's all those kind of things with it, and actually that's okay. And it's very normal,
and that's so important to talk about, because I don't know about you, there are a group of people within the church who got married really young, and you know, God bless them. That is not my story. My dating life has been far more up and down and more on the disastrous level.
Well, feel free to send us any stories. We'll enjoy them.
Well, how long have you got? I've experienced a little bit of an attitude of people that have done it and they're married now and they've sort of ticked that box. Not that marriage is a box. The ones that got married very young had this, like, I don't know whether it's actually real or whether I felt the pressure of it from people that I knew then, of that they bossed it, they smashed dating, and you know they did, but that's because God intended that then, and everyone's journey is different, and so it's so important, I find, to have that discussion. And the fact that you deciding to end a relationship or to not date that person or to date that person is not you've done well or you've done badly, it's just what's happening.
Yeah Absolutely.
I think we were saying as well that like it can seem like it's two discrete things, like you're single, you're in a relationship, or you're married. And actually the fact is like we fluctuate, and there's people who are also married who really sadly it doesn't work out, or they're widowed, or and actually you come back into being single, or you're dating and it doesn't work out. And actually we're kind of the same people, like regardless of where you are. And it's not like a hierarchy of kind of progressing up the ladder, or suddenly you're in a relationship and now everything's fine and your friends and all that other stuff that was important in your life suddenly isn't important. Like you're still you, and actually it's more complicated. You're trying to navigate all these different things, and you've added an extra person into the mix. Like if anything, it's making life more complicated. So I think actually it's just not that helpful to see it as, we have our church small group of the single people and our church small group of the married people. Like it's not a helpful dichotomy, really.
And we should be able to help each other in that, because if you're somebody who's engaged and about to be married, then the married people within your church environment can come in and support you. But if you're unfortunately going through a breakup or a divorce or something like that, then the single people can be like, hey, this is the stuff that you can like look forward to and can help with your identity change. I think Amelia and I were talking about this quite a lot recently, haven't we? Reflecting when you break up with somebody, you go, or when they break up with you, you go from being the girlfriend or the boyfriend, and then suddenly you're not. A bit of an identity, like, but who am I now? So having the support from your single friends in the church community, essential, man.
Oh, it is. And I think, like, just to add to that, it's just like, why do we put singleness as lesser? Like, why is that something that can be seen when actually it really is like an incredible time and space, and there's so many positives. Yes, okay, it does come with some like, negatives at times as well, but like that's like part and parcel of everything with life, isn't it? And actually I really like, I guess I get frustrated when it feels like singleness is spoken of as like the kind of waiting space, when actually it's just, that's just your space that you're occupying right now. And actually there's so much good that is offered in that space and that you can do with it. In like, it's empowering. You get to know yourself, and also I think when you date you get to know yourself as well. Like through dating you really get to unpick and learn a lot about yourself.
Can you give us an example?
Well, I'm just gonna like go back to that. I'll say it because I said it on our podcast. I accidentally dribbled once on a date. That was quite embarrassing, but that I think like apart from like that, like that kind of tongue-in-cheek side, which actually did happen, it was mortifying. But like you can learn like what you are comfortable with. So are you comfortable with a certain type of communication? Do you prefer phone calls? Do you prefer meeting up regularly? What's your boundary? What can you tolerate for yourself? Actually, what's your strengths? Are you good at like making small talk? Are you good at making somebody
dates?
Yeah, exactly. Like there is so much that you can learn about yourself, and also kind of in that sense as well, it's like it's an opportunity to see yourself in a new light. Like if you go traveling, you learn about yourself, don't you? How do you manage stress? How do you manage like all of these like time things that you have to stick to, being in a different culture? Like it's another opportunity to learn something about who you are, I think.
Yeah.
And also sometimes if you don't date people, like you don't necessarily even know who would be a good match for you as like a person. I think sometimes you might think someone's like would be perfect, and actually then you hang out with them, and it's the same with friendship, but like you hang out with someone and you're like, oh actually this is much more like difficult than I thought it was going to be, or like, oh gosh, we really click. And that same thing you can kind of learn actually. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on the podcast, kind of you can have these priorities about like you want someone to like look a certain way or have a certain job or own a house or whatever is important to you, but actually those things aren't necessarily what is important. And what's important is like actually that your characters match, and sometimes you don't know that unless you actually try spending time with someone.
Plus if you're looking for someone to own a house, you've severely
you've limited that pool, right?
You might have to aim like older.
Much older, or move further up the country, move north.
I love what you're saying about actually you do have to kind of like, you do have to try this out, because if you go in with the mindset of I have to marry the first person I date, like if the communication styles aren't right, if the personalities don't match, like, but you force yourself to marry them anyway, that's a terrible idea. You're just setting
Yeah.
yourself up for a life of unhappiness. And actually, like, I think one of the really important things is, as like young Christian people, is that we don't let this pressure that's around us get to us, so that we stick in these relationships for longer than we should, even to the point of marriage, because some people do. Which is, yeah, like really sad.
Yeah, I think the thought, and I definitely unwrapped this in my mind through doing the podcast, I think like we both did in a way, that kind of subconscious thought maybe that like if you date someone, like, you know, you're thinking about potentially it leading to marriage like right from the start. Actually, that's so much pressure. Why would you ever go on a date with anyone that maybe is a question mark? Because you're not going to marry them. And yeah, like you say, it's your entire life that you're committing to in marriage. And going on one date with someone is not committing your entire life, and they should not be comparative, because saying, yeah, I'll go for a coffee with someone, like at the end of the day, it might be 2 uncomfortable hours and then you're done. Maybe half an hour if you're better at getting out of situations than I am. But like marriage is your whole life, and you're only going to do that with someone, hopefully, that you really love and also just get on really well with.
On top of that, it's really sensible to reduce your expectation, to guard your own heart as well, because you're putting a lot of pressure on that other person. If you're like, oh, we've been on a few dates, or we've been dating for like a couple of weeks, this is the one. Like, you're setting yourself up for a big wound if you're not careful, because suddenly you've been dating for a couple of months, you've convinced in your head and in your thought life, because that's a big one, isn't it? Like what you're thinking about, how much time is that one person who have you actually got to know properly occupying in that, this is my husband, this is my wife. And then before you know it, they might break up with you, or something might happen, and then suddenly you're not only upset about losing of that person, but also this imaginary future that you just imagined in your head about happily ever after, because Disney lies.
No, it does. But also, just like on that point, like if you settle or feel like the expectation to be married to the person you've been on 4 or 5 dates with, you then like you really risk the potential of like getting so married to that thought that you begin to lose and compromise on yourself.
Yes.
And then actually, are you becoming like a shell of the person that you are? Are you being true to who you are and who you've been created to be by compromising so much of who you are to make something work that you're like romanticizing?
Really good point. Just smashed it. Should we
follow that? That's the end.
That's the TED Talk.
But yeah, like I think it raises this issue actually, like how do we date biblically? Because again, like one of the huge issues in this area is actually like dating as a modern concept. You don't really see it in the Bible, because the Bible it's a lot about, you know, these people have arranged marriages, or, you know, kind of almost any situation but dating in a lot of ways. How, throwing this question out to all 3 of you, how do we date biblically? It's huge.
That's a big question.
Yeah, that is a big question.
I think, yeah, I don't know, there's probably lots of areas in life that this applies to as well, where there's not like a biblical model necessarily of how exactly to do it. But I think what we've kind of tried to think about in the podcast and like in our own lives is actually like dating, use it like trying to represent like the character of Jesus and like emulate what he would do, in the sense of like actually respect for other people, being kind, kind of actually trying to leave people better than you found them, not being selfish, kind of those things that actually you can bring into dating. So it's not, you're not just going to a date and thinking, is this the man that I'm going to marry? Like, this is what I'm looking for. These are my tick lists. Do they match it? Are they going to pay for my dinner? You know, anything like that, where it's actually like taking, but actually, okay, what can I learn from this situation? How can I like make sure that they have a good experience and feel like listened to and respected and all that stuff I'm thinking about like on a first date here, obviously, but actually like going and being honest as well, like as you get further down the dating journey, like actually how can I have integrity and honesty and be true to like Geraldine said, like to who God created me to be, but also not try and get them to compromise on who God's created them to be. Kind of those things I think probably are more helpful to think about than like a biblical model for it, I guess, because there's lots of other things that we see in the Bible that we don't enact exactly Like I don't cover my head when I go to church, or
Yeah.
not speak out loud or anything like that, which we see as contextual. And so I think actually we can kind of take the heart of things and bring that into it.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, like you said, they used to do arranged marriages. How great would that be to a degree? That'd take a lot of stress out of the situation, wouldn't it?
Be very
Although-
So much easier.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? But to be fair, I don't know if I trust my parents to
No,
do
I would
that.
not trust.
I guess like I would probably answer the question like really similarly to how Sarah has, actually, just being like, I don't know how to answer what biblical dating is, because like you said, there isn't a picture, is there? There's not one way of doing it. But I think for me, what's really important is doing it with integrity, doing it with respect, being true to who you are, you know, being intentional about it in that sense of like, how are you approaching it? How are you approaching that other person? Like, in like hoping and seeking to leave that situation with you being a better person and them being better and having a good experience. Like sometimes, I don't know, we just rub up against people in our lives, like just that sounded bad. Please don't actually do that.
It's a brilliant expression that Sarah made. It's like, is anyone gonna say it?
That really tickled me.
Sorry. Let's not advocate doing that to people.
Also,
but
can I just say, with the like, those of you listening, you can't see this, but Sarah and Geraldine are sat right next to each other on Zoom. And so as she said that, her arm just like rubbed up.
what I was trying to say is like I genuinely believe that like not all relationships or interactions are destined to be like that one lasting thing, but actually if you're in a relationship or you're interacting with somebody for like a couple of days, a year, however long it's going to be, like let's try and do that well. Live that as best as we can, do that with integrity, love, light, kindness, like the fruits of the spirit, you know, being generous and like bringing that into it, and then hoping that both of you, for whatever length that relationship is there for, leaving as better people.
I love that. I really love that. And it's so like, I think especially looking at how we can, like you say, kind of how we can serve and develop the other person as well is really key, because that's so countercultural. Because it's so like at the moment it's so kind of like, what can I get out of this relationship? Like, and especially in such a chaotic world that we have around us, kind of like looking for security, which so many people do in a relationship, is look for security in that other person. But yeah, like actually going in with the attitude of, how can I, like you say, kind of stay true to yourself, but also how do I kind of like help this person in their walk with Jesus? You know, is that my role? Also is kind of a question as well. Kind of, is that something that we are going to do as in a relationship or as friends or not at all? Is really cool to question that. So
I've often heard it like described as like honoring somebody. How do you honor that person? Because sometimes honoring that person is breaking up with them. And how do you do that as honorably and as honoring them as you can? Because ultimately they're also a child of Christ. And you know, I've heard it in so many relationship talks, so you know, this is your brother or sister in Christ or what have you. But that is true. There's a reason we say it, and it's keeping like an eye on that.
And I think actually it also applies to like, because I remember I was talking about like actually a fact, I just really don't like to let people down. And so the thought of like going on a date with someone and then them being really interested and then not being interested, I was like, oh gosh, like how do you do this? Like I don't want to have to like marry this person because I don't want to let them down. And actually we have another friend who I feel like is really good at this, at just like sending a message to be so respectful and just say, you know, it was really lovely to meet you. Like I don't see it going anywhere, but thank you so much for your time, you know. And actually it can be like so simple, but actually just saying, or doing the, you know, I think you probably also felt that it was a friend's vibe, and then you save their dignity and everything, but actually even doing that is like so much more respectful than just being like, oh well obviously there wasn't, like you just, I feel like ghosting people is like very not,
it's not
ideal. Good integrity.
No, the thing is, I've done it though. I've done it, and I feel awful.
Sorry.
No, like genuinely,
she's been called out on her own podcast.
I think, honestly. No, I did. I also spoke about this for Salt, the dating channel, and they were like, "Would you like to come on and talk about ghosting?" And I was like, "Okay." But like that idea of I don't want to have that confrontation, so I'm just gonna ghost. When it happens to you and you're on the other side, it's horrible. But when somebody gives you that message of, hey, it's lovely chatting, or it's lovely meeting up, but you feel so much better as the person on the other side of that, going, oh, I know, at least I don't have to go, well, what happened, what went wrong, like
and it's so much about communication, isn't it? Like actually there's so much that can be achieved when we communicate properly, both, you know, in that situation where you're breaking it off and in the relationship as well. Like I mean, I say this as someone who's never dated, but it's a pretty good one, I think, communication.
And also at the start, like if more people just went and said, look, shall we go on a date, that would also solve a lot of problems.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Have you ever asked a guy out?
I mean, no.
Why
wait, actually that's not true. One time I did message someone and say, like, should we go for coffee, but that was like someone that we've been like back and forward messaging for a long time, and I think you told me to do it.
Probably.
But I genuinely think, like, actually we need to do that more. People need to do that more, and like it does take courage, but also at the end of the day, if they turn you down, you're going to be like a bit embarrassed for a minute, but and you're not going to agonize over it for months thinking, oh, I really like them, blah, blah, blah. And it could solve a lot of problems.
It's also quite empowering.
It is, yes, especially for like well, I did a bit of a study on this actually when I was working for another dating company as part of my job, and I like put out a couple of like questionnaires to see what the sort of gender stereotypes and how people thought about them still. And like there was like, guys, do you like being asked out by girls, or is it off-putting? And they were like, most of them, like 70%, 80% were like, yeah, great, I love it if a girl asks me out, she's confident, that's cool. The girls were like, we wouldn't dare ask a guy out. So much more of that percentage there. Obviously you had your like diehard feminists that were like, yeah, I will ask them out, whatever. But the majority of people, and then I was like asking a couple of people why, and they were like, well, because it comes off as a bit desperate.
Which is like, I hate that that's the case, but it is, isn't it? Like that is genuinely kind of the feel around it, but I don't think it should be, because why is it not desperate for a guy to ask a girl out? And also,
and clearly from this not scientific in any way, but from my little polls that I put out, the guys didn't mind. In fact, they quite liked it. And there's you know, there's all sorts of personalities out there, and like there's the shyer men that really probably find it absolutely terrifying and would love a girl to ask them out. So lady, if you're listening and this is you, ask him out.
Absolutely. I think it's because like it's awkward for everybody. I don't think anybody particularly really enjoys asking people out, because it's vulnerable, isn't it? Everyone hates vulnerability.
Yeah, and especially if you're going in kind of actually quite liking somebody, it's just this huge thing. Like I've done it a couple of times, and as we see, it has not ended like particularly well, and it has been really huge. But actually, it is a real confidence builder. That's probably not a good thing to say on this podcast. No, it's real. It's real. Like, you know, sometimes it can be painful, but also that's okay. Like, and it's really good to kind of step out in this, because like you said, Sarah, as well, like you know, you're not gonna know. Like sometimes it can go on for months, and that does kind of make it worse in some ways. And so like if you're wondering if you're in one of these situations, like really encourage you to go for it, guys and girls. Because also, you know, when you're in kind of long dragged out periods, it can just make things so much worse. And also it can end well. Like in a lot of situations it can end really well.
You never know unless you try.
Yeah, exactly.
Dare to date, guys.
Dare to date, there we are.
There it is.
Yeah, often as well, like if you are, you know that kind of, oh, I like this person, and that if you're not careful, that turns into more than it should, because the idea is quite exciting. It's quite nice to like somebody, isn't it, without having to have the actual messiness of actually relationship, or actually having to ask them out. It's quite nice to have that. And I think particularly in like if you've got a couple of people around you who are quite into the chatting about relationship, anyone you like at the moment, you can get into this little world of, oh, I quite like this, but and it's very high school, but it's dangerous. So basically dare to
Mm.
date. Hashtag.
Yeah.
Online dating, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Come on.
I think it's just like it's the way that people meet these days. Like it's far more common to hear people saying like I met online.
Yeah.
And actually it can open up the opportunity for you to meet people that you never would have met before. Like that's one bonus of it. Another bonus is that if you have a terrible date, the chances of you crossing over with them again, pretty slim.
Yeah.
You know, takes
Very
less
true.
of that kind of anxiety out of it. And it's quite convenient. Literally there on your phone, kind of easy. Set up a date, quite nice.
Yeah, good one. I literally went to a wedding like a few weeks ago with people who met on Salt.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
It
Testimonials.
does. We had, like, actually, I mean, I'm quite proud of this, that quite a few people have messaged saying, because they listened to our podcast, they went on online dating and now they've got like a year and a half relationship.
Yeah.
At least one of them's got married.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah,
you
at the end
guys,
of the day, you never know.
claiming that.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I will. I think we did say on our podcast we'd like an
Yeah.
invite to the wedding, but
Yeah. We've not had the invite yet,
still
but
come.
you know, we're waiting.
But it doesn't mean it's going to work out for everyone. And I think, you have to decide yourself whether or not you want to go on it. And it might be, that there's stuff going on in your life that either it's not a good time or actually like meeting strangers would be very anxiety inducing or you wouldn't feel safe or all that stuff. And you have to kind of take that into account yourself. But I think, like Geraldine said, it is a really good way to just meet people that you never would have met. You can learn so much about yourself through it. You can actually have a really great time with people. Like if you count everyone as a great human being who would have something to offer, you can always have an interesting conversation or a really funny story.
Yeah.
And you never know. I think like an awkward date is just funny.
Yeah, I agree.
I definitely have, I don't know if you have been on online dates where the other person just doesn't really talk.
Yeah.
And then I like ask so many questions and they're just giving me nothing. And then, I feel like I am just talking to like fill the space. But then I feel awkward. But I don't think they feel awkward because they always seem to think it's gone well.
Yeah, sometimes they're like, oh, they want somebody that's chatty and that will talk.
Yeah, like sometimes it just is awkward, but also that's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world.
Not a
If it's
second
awkward,
date.
that's
Just
fine.
not-
It might just not be the right thing. So yeah.
And I think that comes from like having the more casual attitude.
Yeah.
Because if you're going into it thinking, maybe this will be great, or maybe it won't, but it's nice to get out and meet a new person. That's very different from being like, I'm going to meet my future husband. Like that's going to be huge pressure and you're going to be so disappointed. And I think we'd also say like, from what other people said to us as well, is actually like getting onto a date sooner rather than later and just meeting in person or at least having a phone call rather than chatting for a long time is really helpful because you can chat and get an idea of someone and then you meet them and they're not at all who you thought they were going to be, and like the longer that period goes on for, the harder it's going to be when you meet and it's not a good situation.
I would add to that like a video chat soon if it's a bit of a travel, because with online dating you can end up like matching with people that are further away than just down the road or what have you. It's a bit like, oh, do I really want to like spend that money driving there or what have you? So video chat is a great way to do it, and then you're like, oh, I like this, but let's actually meet up kind of vibe.
And you can limit that time down quite well as well.
Yes.
You
I've
can
got to go.
I love that. Fair enough.
Also, like, I mean, there's something efficient and inefficient about online dating in the way that that people are on there generally because they want to date. So it takes out that kind of question of, do they like me? Do they not? So if you match, that's great. So that's kind of efficient, but then it's inefficient because you don't get that kind of instant connection that you do when you're in person, and that instant knowing if you like their vibe. And I know you've sort of mentioned about the kind of wanting to meet somebody in person, Amelia.
I mean, I'm kind of just a hopeless romantic, to be honest. Like,
you want to meet cute.
Oh yeah.
Like, well, obviously, like that'd be amazing, but like even just the kind of the thought of online dating for me, like I'm not saying this is the case because again, like I haven't tried it, so I really can't say anything. But like the thought of it takes a lot of the romantic element out of it. But also, like, I mean, like you said before, like films, Disney, so much to blame for this because it's kind of like it just gives this image in our culture. Actually, this is what dating should be like. Like, you should meet in a coffee shop and have this instant connection, and then, you know, suddenly be dating and married 6 months later, kind of thing. That's what I want. I don't want to get married.
But even when you talk to people who did meet in person, very often the story's not romantic at all.
No.
Yeah.
Like, they were friends for ages first and like didn't like each other, and then they got together, or, you know, one of them asked the other one out and the other one actually was like, oh, I'm not interested, but there's no one else around, so I'll go. Like, I feel like often the stories aren't
My parents have
like
the
that.
least romantic proposal story of ever. My dad, my dad and mum were chatting, and my dad went, I think we should write a list of advantages and disadvantages of getting married.
Yeah.
Which was the proposal. There was no will you marry me. There was they then went away and wrote their separate list. And then they looked at it, correlated it, and went, yeah, okay, let's get married.
I kind of love that. It's quite efficient.
Yeah.
You know what you're signing up to.
logical. It's just not romantic in any way.
No, not romantic.
But I think that's
together,
the thing.
so, you know.
Yeah, it's clearly worked. I mean, together, so well done.
Yeah. I think like everyone wants that, I would think, like that romantic, like swept off the feet moment. And some people, I'm sure, do get it, but I just think it's also,
I'm not one of those people.
We're lied to sometimes.
I find romantic stuff really cheesy. And I'm just like, no.
That's because your parents did a list to get engaged.
You've inherited that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I didn't put two and two together. Yeah. Right, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. When we were growing up, online dating wasn't a thing. Suddenly it became a thing, like, a bit later on. And it's always had this stigma around it. So I think, like, you know, it's a weird space to kind of grow up in, as opposed to kind of the generation below us, I guess, who are kind of just really okay with this idea, like it's normal for them. But for us, I guess it's always been this kind of mixed thing, and like, yeah, so I don't know, probably I do just need to get over myself. And
well, I would say you don't need to get over yourself.
No.
Absolutely fine. Like, you like be comfortable with where, like, how it works for you. Like, there's no pressure either way. But maybe one thing that could potentially help a little bit is just reframing online dating to be like, that's your meet cute.
Yeah.
But also, like, genuinely, you don't need to get over yourself in any way. Like, if you're comfortable to do online dating, great. If you're not, then don't. Like, do what works for you. There's no pressure, there's no time pressure, you know?
And ultimately, like, being comfortable single, and singleness, if you want to date, it doesn't have to be all the time, and there's definitely times when you need to take a break. I've known that for myself, when I've been like, I'm just in the motion of dating here and I don't actually want to be. And the time thing is a thing. Have I got this time? Because you can start chatting to somebody, like if you're doing the online thing, you can start chatting to somebody online, and then suddenly, like, your life just explodes with busyness, and then what could have potentially been a relationship or something that could have gone a bit further, you had to let go of because you were so busy. And if you recognize that sooner rather than later, that can be a wise thing, and be like, actually right now I just don't have the time. But later on I will, and now I'm ready, kind of thing. So
and I think that we kind of wanted with the podcast as well, like, not at all to say like everyone needs to be dating, because I actually think some people never want to get married. That's great. They're just living their single best lives. I fully back that.
So good.
That's amazing. Other people, it's not the right time. They have dated in the past, or actually they're not ready, or they don't have time, or, you know, there's other stuff going on in life. And actually, I think it's more just like, it's empowering to know you have the option. But there was a long time I didn't go on online dating. I went on it for a little bit. I felt like it was good for me, but I also didn't really like it. And so I came off it. And I'm glad I did it, because I'm like, I know that's there. And I know that for me, it was good to do it, because I was judgmental about online dating, and I bought into that stigma of it. And I don't want to be someone who judges something actually inaccurately. And there's nothing wrong with it. And it's great. And there's great people on there. Loads of my friends have met people online. I think it's really good. I don't think it was for me all the time. But I think it's like, to have that power to say, actually, this is where I am. If I really want to meet someone, I don't need to wait for someone to come and ask me out. Like, I am able to go and ask someone out, or go on online dating. Or go to speed dating, or do something else. It just kind of unlocks that thing that I think we can often feel, or people can often feel, just powerless. And then you're also told singleness is less good, so you feel powerless, and you also feel like you're in an inferior state, and that's just not what we believe at all. So that's kind of what we wanted to say as well.
No, absolutely. I love that. And it's so, like you say, it's so important to recognize like where you're at. Because like there's no point rushing yourself into it, especially like you know, emotionally. Like the reality, unfortunately, is that people have so much baggage a lot of the time, which, you know, no like judgment or stigma at all, but actually sometimes you are that person with baggage, and if you're not in a right place to start dating, forcing yourself is not going to do anything for you. It's actually going to do a lot more damage a lot of the time. And so, like, you know, particularly if you've, I mean, there's this whole thing of like rebounds, like if you've just come out of a relationship, like you need to make sure absolutely that you are ready to date before you go into that, because it's, you know, if you're rushing yourself and you're actually not over the previous person or whatever your situation is, you know, if you're not in the right place to date, there's no point forcing yourself, because
And
it's
you can hurt
unhealthy.
someone else.
Exactly.
One of the really important things within this whole like dating sphere anyway is having like mates as well who are in a similar kind of path, or just people that can hold you accountable and stuff. Like taking it back to when we were talking about how we honor people and how we date well, like having mates that you can help check in with, that make sure that you are not kind of like, I guess all of the points that we've been talking about today are that support network, and that almost that the third wheel that is necessary in this dating debacle. Oh, I quite like that, dating debacle. I like that. It's really useful, and I think you guys are say that for each other, and definitely Amelia and I are for one another as well. So yeah.
Before we end, again, guys, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you like came here to say that you wanted to say that you haven't had the opportunity to do so yet?
No, yeah, I think we've covered it all.
Cool. And if people want to listen to your podcast, where can they find it?
Thank you very much. Yes, they can find us. We're on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, all the places. We're called A Tale of Two Singles. And you can email us as well at taleoftwosingles@gmail.com if you've got any questions or funny dating stories. We are planning to do another series at some point.
Yay,
so we welcome.
Love to hear it.
Come on.
Yes.
So this week, people, our recommendation section, we figured we'd make it appropriate to what we've just been talking about. So we are going to recommend to you unusual, funky date ideas. Sarah, why don't you go first? Have you got a recommendation for us for unusual date ideas?
We were trying to think about this. Didn't really necessarily come up with anything particularly unusual. Well, I thought maybe it'd be quite fun to go on a wine tasting experience.
Yes, I love that. That's cool.
Something to talk about, but also someone to like explain things to you if you know it's a bit much. And who doesn't like? Some people don't like wine, fair enough, but people who do like wine, great time.
Yeah,
love that. That's great show. 100% would do that. Cool. Geraldine?
I went kind of opposite and thought unusual would be a trampoline park.
Yes,
that'd be fun.
Oh my goodness, yes, I want to do that.
Jumping on a trampoline is actually quite exhausting, so I do worry that it would show how horribly unfit I am
if you end up red and sweaty
after like 3 bounces.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's not a first date idea. Maybe it's like you've got to know
later
it
down
a
the
little bit
line.
more. They know that you can
Fifth
look
date.
pretty sometimes, and now you're showing them the other side.
Yes.
Fun side.
So good.
Good.
Tanya?
Okay, so mine's a date recommendation, but also a recommendation to do with your friends. It is either a starter or a dessert crawl. So like you would do a pub crawl, it's like choose if you're a starter person or if you're a dessert person, one of those, and go to different like restaurants and just order a starter or just order a dessert. I did it with my friends at uni, and it's a great idea. So
that is a good idea.
Yes, do it, guys.
Absolutely.
What about you, Amelia? What's yours?
No, I was going to say so good, because you know you can definitely drag that out as well and go to quite a few places. Mine is do an escape room. It's so much fun. I've done it with friends, and like again, you can do this with friends or with a date. But yeah, it's so much fun. Like you can get some really kind of like different funky ones. I think the one we did was kind of like a science lab type thing. that you can get so many different themes as well. But also like you can, I think Tanya was saying this before we were recording, like you can kind of like see how their mind works. It's a good test of compatibility.
And how they cope with stress.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like
And how well you work together as a team.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one,
Right.
actually. It
It's
works
just-
on a lot of levels.
You know, it's drawing me back to, sorry, digress again, but have you watched Schitt's Creek? There's an episode where they do the escape room and that, and it's just what character would you be? Would you be Moira? Would you be Johnny? What are they all called? I can't remember their names. David. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Patrick.
Alexis.
Who are you going to be?
It can either
That'd be
go
quite
really
fun.
well or really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on. Those of you listening, please do also listen to A Tale of Two Singles podcast. It's amazing. But don't stop listening to our podcast. Please do give us a like, a follow, subscribe, and a review on the podcast sites. And any suggestions you've got for ideas for next episodes and stuff like that, please do get in contact. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.